I'll be honest, I almost didn't go to the interview. I had been rejected so many times in the last 3 months that opening my inbox started to feel like a slow form of torture. Either it was another bland, impersonal, thank you for your interest email, or, worse, total silence. I was broke, behind on rent, and questioning all my life choices. Just millennial things. So when I got a call from a company I barely remembered applying to, asking if I could come in the next day, I said yes, more out of desperation than excitement. What I didn't expect was to walk into the interview room, sit down across from the hiring manager, and hear him say, "We've met before." At first I thought he was mistaken. I tilted my head, trying to place his face. Clean-shaven, neatly combed black hair, crisp navy shirt rolled to the elbows. He looked polished, sharp, definitely not someone I remembered. "I'm sorry?" I said, with that awkward smile people do when they're trying not to offend someone they may or may not know. He smiled a little, but there was something about the way he said it. Not smug exactly, but intent. "I'm sure of it. High school? Spring Lake?" My stomach dropped. And then I saw it. The faint scar near his temple, the kind that only showed when he tilted his head just right. "No way," I said, sitting up straighter. "Evan Rosner?" He nodded, and suddenly I was thrown back 10 years. High school gym class, last period English. My hopeless, silent crush on the quiet guy who sat 2 rows ahead and never looked at me. Or so I thought. We weren't friends. Not really. He was one of those mysterious, keep-to-himself types who always seemed to exist just outside the chaos of high school social life. I remembered watching him from behind my textbook, wondering if he was into guys, wondering if he'd ever look at me. Apparently, he had. "You were the one who wrote that piece for the senior year lit mag," Evan said, like no time had passed. "The story about the guy on the train?" I blinked. "You read that?" He grinned. "I edited it." "No, you didn't." "I did. I was co-editor. You didn't notice?" I blinked again, feeling my face go red. Of course I hadn't noticed. I had been too focused on sneaking glances at him when I thought he wouldn't see. I had no idea he even knew who I was. "That was, a lifetime ago," I said, clearing my throat. "It was good," he replied, and for a second, the interview tension completely disappeared. Then, as if suddenly remembering where we were, he straightened a folder in front of him and cleared his throat. "So, Jason," he said, glancing down at my resume, "looks like you've been doing digital marketing since college." "Yeah," I said, still slightly disoriented by the nostalgia trip. "Mostly contract work, some freelance. Social media, copywriting, campaign planning. I was at Piper Labs for 2 years, but they downsized earlier this year." He nodded. "I saw the case study you linked. The ad series for the mental health nonprofit? That was yours?" "All mine," I said, my voice stabilizing now. "I worked with the creative director on the visuals, but all the copy, strategy, and rollout was mine." He looked genuinely impressed. That was strong, really strong. I felt a tiny spark of hope flare up. The rest of the interview flowed better than any I'd had in months. We talked campaigns, content, team structure. He asked smart questions and actually listened to my answers. And every now and then, he'd throw in something personal, like asking if I still wrote fiction or if I still drank black coffee with way too much sugar like I did in high school. I was thrown, honestly. I didn't think he'd noticed me back then, let alone remembered me. When we wrapped up, he stood and offered his hand. "We've got a few more candidates to see, but I'm glad you came in. It was good seeing you again." "Yeah," I said, shaking his hand. "You too. Kind of surreal." He smiled. That same quiet, unreadable expression I remembered from high school. "Hey," he added as I turned to leave. "If nothing else, maybe we could catch up sometime. Get a drink. It'd be nice to talk outside of resumes." I froze for half a second. "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that." As I stepped out of the building into the fall sunlight, I realized something I hadn't felt in weeks. I was smiling. And Not because I nailed the interview. Because Evan Rosner, my quiet high school crush, who I thought had never even seen me, had not only remembered me, but wanted to see me again. And I had a feeling this story wasn't over. I didn't expect to hear from him the next day, but less than 24 hours after the interview, my phone buzzed with an email. Subject: follow-up from Evan Rosner. Jason, I know I said we had more candidates to review, but I'll be honest. Your interview stuck with me. Not just because we have history, but because your work spoke for itself. We'd love to offer you the role. If you're still interested, let's set up a time to go over next steps. Also, about that drink I mentioned, let me know. Evan. I stared at the screen for a good 30 seconds before rereading it twice. Then I smiled like an idiot. I accepted the job, obviously. I sent back a polite, professional thank you, looking forward to it. And then, after pacing around my apartment for a few minutes, I tacked on a follow-up. And yeah, I'd be down for that drink. Let me know when works for you, he responded almost instantly. Friday night, 7. Juniper, on 10th? A week ago, I was crying into my ramen, wondering if I'd ever get hired again. Now I had a new job, and a drink planned with the guy the first used to fantasize about in AP English. Friday couldn't come fast enough. Juniper on 10th was a quiet bar, wood-paneled, warm lighting, nothing pretentious. I got there 5 minutes early, palms sweaty even though I told myself this wasn't a date. I wore the nice button-down I'd used for the interview because I didn't have a lot of options, and I ordered a beer to keep my hands busy. Evan showed up right on time. He looked good, too good, honestly. A soft gray sweater, dark jeans, just enough scruff to make you question whether he meant to shave or not. He spotted me immediately and gave this crooked, half smile that made my stomach flip. Didn't get lost, I see, I said as he sat down. Nah, he said. Lived around the corner for 2 years. This place is kind of my spot. Great, I muttered. So if I spill a drink on myself, you'll know everyone here to laugh about it with. He chuckled. I'll protect your dignity, mostly. The drinks came fast, the conversation even faster. We didn't talk about the job much. He asked about my writing, and I confessed I hadn't written anything personal in months. He told me he still played the piano, something I didn't even know he did, and that he had a cat named Amos who sat on his keyboard anytime he tried to practice. It felt normal, easy. At one point, after our second round, Evan leaned back and looked at me for a long moment, not in a weird way. More like he was trying to figure something out. You really didn't know I was your RA, huh? Not even a little, I admitted. I had a mild obsession with you back then, and somehow completely missed that detail. He raised an eyebrow. Obsession? I regretted saying it immediately. Wrong word. Just, I noticed you. He smirked. I noticed you too. My mouth went dry. Back then? I asked. Yeah. You were always scribbling in notebooks during floor meetings, sitting in the back row, like you hoped no one would call on you. I laughed. That was me trying to avoid social interaction. I thought it was kind of hot. I choked on my beer. Evan just smiled and leaned forward, elbows on the table. I wanted to talk to you back then. But, I was your RA. Kind of frowned upon. That, and you were so quiet I figured you were straight. He tilted his head. Yeah, well, turns out I'm not. The air between us changed, just slightly. I wasn't sure if it was the beer or the way he was looking at me now, but my skin buzzed under the weight of it. I had no idea, I said softly. He shrugged. Most people didn't. And now? I asked. He didn't answer right away. Just reached for his glass, took a sip, then set it down. I don't exactly go waving a flag, but I'm not hiding it either. I guess you could say I'm selectively obvious. I raised an eyebrow. And tonight? He gave me a long look. Tonight? He said. I'm being very obvious. My heart skipped. There was a moment, just a flicker, where I thought he might reach for my hand. He didn't, but something about the look in his eyes made me feel like he had. Eventually, we left the bar, walking side by side down the quiet street. The city felt softer somehow, like it was watching but not listening. We stopped at the corner where our paths split. I turned to say something. Something dumb, probably. But Evan beat me to it. "I'm glad you came tonight," he said. "Me too," I replied. "I mean it," he added. "It's good seeing you again." The grown-up version. I gave him a half smile. I feel like I'm still working on that part. He stepped in closer. Just a little. Close enough that I could feel the heat off his skin. "Well," he said, voice low, "you're doing a good job so far." I was pretty sure my brain short-circuited for a second. Then he leaned in and kissed me. It wasn't long. Just a soft, careful brush of lips. But it left me dizzy, spinning, in the best way. When he pulled back, his eyes searched mine. "Was that okay?" "Yeah," I said. "That was very okay." He smiled, then nodded toward the subway entrance. "Get home safe, Jason." "You too, Evan." And as I walked away, heart pounding and face warm, I realized something. This wasn't just a story about getting a job. It was the start of something else entirely. Monday morning hit different. I woke up earlier than I needed to, showered twice, and changed shirts 3 times before leaving for my first day. Not because I was nervous about the job. Well, okay, maybe a little, but mostly because Evan would be there, and I had no idea how we were supposed to act now. Was Friday night a one-time thing? A warm, nostalgic moment fueled by old memories and alcohol? Or was it the beginning of something real? I stepped into the building trying to keep my expectations in check. This was still work, after all. Still a professional setting. Even if he had kissed me on a street corner under the glow of a deli sign. The office was on the 4th floor of a converted warehouse, open concept, exposed brick, the usual startup aesthetic. I checked in with the receptionist, got my badge, and was led to a glass-walled conference room for orientation. And there he was. Evan was already sitting at the head of the table, going over some paperwork. He looked up when I walked in, and smiled. Not a smirk, not polite, a real smile. Quiet, warm, like we shared a secret no one else knew. "Morning," he said. "Hey," I replied, trying to sound cool. "Didn't expect to see you in orientation." "Small company," he said with a shrug. "I wear a lot of hats. Today, I'm the welcoming committee." He stood and offered a folder. "First day package, benefits info, passwords, all that fun stuff." Our fingers brushed. Just that. The briefest touch, but it was enough to light up every nerve in my hand. He noticed. For a second, he hesitated. Then his voice dropped just slightly. "We're keeping it professional here," he said, "just so you know." "Yeah," I said, "of course. But," he added, stepping just a bit closer, "doesn't mean I'm not thinking about Friday." My throat went dry. I looked around. The room was still empty. He leaned in the slightest bit. "Later this week," he said, barely above a whisper. "Dinner?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Yeah, I'd like that." He smiled again, the same smile that made me feel 15 all over again. Then the door opened, and 2 other new hires walked in, and just like that, he was all business again, handing out folders, cracking light jokes, explaining the company's Slack etiquette like nothing had happened. The rest of the day passed in a blur of setup, paperwork, and awkward get-to-know-you chats with my new teammates. The office vibe was chill, creative types with hoodies and tattoos, bowls of candy in every corner, the whole thing smelling faintly of coffee and hand sanitizer. I spotted Evan a few times, walking through the open space, talking to team leads, scribbling something on the whiteboard in the corner conference room. Each time, he caught my eye, and we'd share a quick glance. Not flirty, not obvious, but aware. It was a weird feeling, trying to focus on onboarding tasks while replaying a kiss in my head from the guy who now technically outranked me at work. By the time 5:30 rolled around, I was fried. I lingered by my desk, packing up slowly, half hoping I'd see him again before heading out. And then, like he had perfect timing, he appeared. "You made it through day 1, he said, stopping beside my desk. "Barely," he laughed, They didn't throw you out. That's a win. Depends who you ask, I joked. Evan glanced around. Most of the office was already clearing out, then looked back at me. Walk with me? We stepped out into the cool evening, the city humming around us. He didn't say anything at first, just walked beside me, both of us quiet. It was comfortable. Familiar. I meant what I said, he finally offered. About dinner. I nodded. I'd like that. I figured I'd give it a few days, let you settle in. Appreciate that, I said. This week's already overwhelming enough without me having to decipher if my boss is into me. He smirked. I'm technically not your direct manager. HR will back me up. Still feels scandalous. Scandal's underrated. I laughed, and he stopped walking. We were on a quieter street now, a little patch of sidewalk between a bookstore and a Thai place. He turned to face me. Look, I know the timing's weird, but I've thought about you more than I probably should have over the years. I blinked. You have? He nodded. I don't know. Something about seeing you again. It just clicked. I didn't plan for any of this, Jason, but I don't want to pretend I'm not interested just because we happen to work in the same building. I felt my heart catch. Me neither, I said. This is new for me too, but I'm open to seeing where it goes. He smiled, the tension easing from his shoulders. Good, he said. Then how about Thursday night? My place? Should I bring wine? Just yourself. He leaned in, kissed my cheek, soft, deliberate, then stepped back and gave me a look that made my knees a little weak. See you tomorrow. And then he turned and walked off down the street, like he hadn't just flipped my whole week on its head in the best possible way. By Thursday night, I'd completely overthought it. What to wear, what to say, whether I should bring wine anyway even though he said not to. I stood in front of my closet holding the same 2 shirts for 15 minutes, like one of them was going to whisper the answer. This wasn't just a dinner. It was our first actual date. And it wasn't just with anyone. It was Evan, my old crush, my new coworker, the guy who somehow remembered me from 10 years ago and had kissed me like we were the only 2 people on the street. By the time I made it to his apartment, a loft-style space in an old converted textile mill, I was nervous enough to knock twice, then wonder if I should just turn around and go home. But then he opened the door. Hey, he said, that quiet smile spreading across his face. Hey, I said back, holding up the bottle of wine I brought even though he said not to. I ignored your instructions. He took it with a smirk. Good, I like that. Inside, the place was warm and a little chaotic. Books stacked everywhere. A cat, Amos, I assumed, perched on a windowsill, a half-built keyboard stand leaning against the wall. It's still a work in progress, he said, watching me take it all in. I moved in last year and haven't figured out what to do with most of it. It feels lived in, I said. Comfortable. He gave me a look. Like you, I snorted. Wow, that was smooth. He shrugged. I've been working on my delivery. The kitchen smelled amazing. Something garlicky and a little spicy. He gestured to the counter, where 2 plates were already waiting, and we sat at the small table tucked against the window. I'm impressed, I said after the first bite. I didn't take you for the homemade pasta type. I'm full of surprises, he replied, sipping his wine. You were always the creative one. I had to catch up. We talked. About everything. About nothing. The food disappeared, and so did the nervous tension. At one point, we found ourselves standing side by side in the kitchen doing dishes, his hand brushing mine as he passed a plate. It was quiet, except for the soft clink of silverware and the hum of the city through the open window. You always this domestic on first dates? I asked. Only when I really liked the guy, he said without hesitation. That shut me up. I looked over at him and he was watching me again, that focused, unblinking gaze I remembered from high school but hadn't understood until now. What? I asked softly. He set the dish towel down. You have no idea, he said, stepping closer, how often I thought about this. About seeing you again. About having you in my space, watching you smile in my kitchen. My chest tightened. You're serious? Very. And then he kissed me. This time, it wasn't cautious or soft. It was slower, warmer, a little deeper. Like he meant every second of it. I kissed him back. My hand slid up his chest, and his found my waist. The room faded. The wine, the plates, the noise outside. All gone. Just the two of us, finally in the same place after all these years. When we broke apart, his forehead rested against mine. "I don't know where this is going," he said, "but I don't want it to stop." Me neither. Even if it's messy. "I've done messy," I said. "This feels real." He kissed me again, slower this time. Eventually, we moved to the couch, just to sit close, legs tangled, heads leaned back, quietly talking while Amos jumped up and made himself at home across both our laps. It wasn't dramatic, it wasn't perfect, but it was us. And after years of being overlooked, passed up, left on read, and forgotten, this moment felt exactly right. The next few weeks passed in a kind of quiet, contained chaos. The good kind. The kind where every day felt like something was building, even if neither of us had said the word relationship yet. We kept things professional at work, which was surprisingly easy. Evan made a point of keeping his distance during office hours, only offering a quick glance or the occasional shared smirk during a meeting if no one else was looking. But outside of the office, that was a different story. He texted me every night, walked with me to the subway after work, started sending me songs, short stories, inside jokes from high school. Neither of us had realized we both remembered. There was something soft about the way he moved into my life. Not loud, not fast, but steady. And real. We didn't jump into anything physical right away. And I liked that. Instead, we found this rhythm. Long talks after dinner at his place, brushing shoulders on his tiny couch, his cat always crawling into my lap like he'd been waiting for me. Sometimes we'd kiss for a while, lazy and slow, but mostly we just talked. About who we'd been, who we were trying to be, the stuff we didn't tell anyone else. And then one night, about 3 weeks in, he stayed over. It wasn't planned. We'd gone out for Thai, ended up back at mine watching a movie neither of us were paying attention to. One kiss turned into 2, then 3. Then we were tangled together in the low light of my living room, the only sound between us. The occasional whisper of, "Is this okay?" And, "Yeah, this is more than okay." I don't think either of us slept much. The next morning, he made coffee in my tiny kitchen, shirtless, hair messy, looking like he belonged there. He caught me staring and smirked. "What?" "Nothing," I said. "Just haven't had someone in my kitchen in a while." "Well," he said, handing me a mug, "get used to it." I took the mug, trying to hide my smile. "Is that your way of saying you're staying over again?" He leaned in and kissed me on the cheek. "It's my way of saying I'm not going anywhere." Of course, things weren't perfect. A few weeks after that morning, HR sent out a company-wide memo about dating within the office. Vague, but pointed. Someone had clearly noticed something, even if no names were mentioned. I brought it up that night. "You think it's about us?" I asked, sitting on Evan's couch, a half-eaten pizza box between us. He nodded slowly. "Maybe. Probably." I hesitated. "Should we be worried?" He looked at me, serious for a moment. "Do you want to stop?" "No," I said quickly. "I just don't want you to get in trouble, or for people to think I got the job because of you." "You didn't," he said. "And if anyone wants to fight me on that, I'll show them your campaign proposal." I smiled, but I could feel the weight in his voice. He was thinking it through. The risk, the optics, everything. "I can talk to HR," he said. "Tell them we're seeing each other. Get ahead of it. Won't that make things worse? Not if we're honest. And not if I recuse myself from your performance reviews. You do that?" He reached over and took my hand. "For this?" he said. "Absolutely." I didn't say anything at first, just nodded then leaned in and kissed him softly. Later that week, he followed through. Talked to HR, was upfront, transparent. By the time the awkward office gossip caught up, the company already had a policy in place and our bases were covered. It could have been a mess, but it wasn't. It was weirdly easy because Evan made it easy, because he always had this way of being 2 steps ahead, not just for himself, but for me too. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't waiting for something to go wrong. I was just letting it happen. Whatever this was turning into, I was in it. And so was he. Fall started to settle in. The air turned sharp. Mornings were darker. And somewhere between project deadlines and grocery runs, it just became normal being with Evan. It wasn't fireworks every night. No sweeping movie montages or passionate declarations under the rain. It was quieter than that. Softer. I'd wake up to texts from him asking if I needed coffee. We'd eat leftovers on his floor when the couch was covered in laundry. He'd call me Jay when he was sleepy, like it took too much effort to say the whole thing. He never made it feel like a secret. Even at work, now that people knew, he didn't hide anything. He was still respectful, still professional, but he didn't flinch when someone mentioned my name. He didn't avoid me in hallways. And I loved that. Because I'd dated guys before. Guys who kept me in the dark, who made me feel like something to be ashamed of. Evan wasn't like that. He made me feel like I mattered. Like I was chosen. On purpose. And then, one Friday night, I got to see another version of him, one I hadn't really expected. We were at his friend Julia's birthday party. Big loft space. Lots of wine, everyone dressed just a little too nicely. Evan had warned me they were his people, whatever that meant. Mostly old friends from his grad program and a few coworkers from a past job. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but seeing Evan in that world was new. He lit up in a way I hadn't seen before, laughing louder, gesturing more. He was still the Evan I knew, just turned up, like someone had twisted the volume on his personality and let it ring out a little freer. "This is the guy?" Julia asked, pulling me into a hug before I even had a chance to say hi. "The one you won't shut up about?" Evan rolled his eyes. "Don't make it weird. Too late," she said, grinning at me. "You're very cute, by the way." "Thank you," I said, trying not to blush. As the night went on, I mingled, drank wine, even found myself deep in a conversation about indie film scores with one of Evan's old classmates. I kept catching Evan's gaze across the room, not in a possessive way, just soft, like he was checking in, like he wanted me to feel at home. And I did. Later, as we were walking back to his place in the cold, he slipped his hand into mine. "You were great tonight," he said. "I was nervous," I admitted. "You couldn't tell. I liked seeing you like that. With your friends. You seemed lighter." He glanced over. "They're my history. You're my present." I bumped his shoulder. That was almost cheesy. It was completely cheesy, he agreed, but also true. That night, we lay in bed, tangled under the covers, the city noise humming softly through the window. I was half asleep when he said it. Voice low, almost like he wasn't sure I was still awake. I used to picture this, you know. I turned my head slightly. "What?" "Back then. In high school, I'd see you in class or in the hallway, and I'd imagine what it would be like to be with you, like this." I blinked into the dark. "Seriously? Seriously. But you never said anything." "I didn't think you noticed me." I laughed under my breath. "Evan, I wrote bad poetry about you." He lifted his head. "Wait, what?" "Yeah. You wore this gray hoodie every day. It was very emotionally impactful." He groaned and pulled a pillow over his face. "No. No, you did not." "I absolutely did. And it was terrible. You rhymed with heaven." He was still laughing when he pulled me close, his arms tightening around my waist. "I wish we'd known." "We know now." He was quiet for a second. Then he whispered into the curve of my neck. "Yeah," he said. "We do." It was a Saturday in late November when things shifted again. Not in a dramatic way, but in that subtle, life-marking way you only recognize once it's already happened. We'd gone to visit Evan's parents. It was just supposed to be brunch. Casual, no pressure. He made it sound simple. My mom makes too much food. My dad talks about bird watching. You'll be fine. But still, I was nervous. I hadn't met anyone's parents in years. Not like this. Not as the boyfriend. The word had never been officially said between us, but at that point, it didn't need to be. He picked me up that morning, wearing a blue sweater I'd secretly loved since our second date. As we drove, he kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting on my knee, squeezing lightly every time I got quiet. "You're going to be fine," he said, smiling over at me. "They already like you. They haven't even met me. They like that I like you. That's enough." He wasn't lying about the food. His mom had made an entire spread. Pancakes, eggs, fruit, some weird quinoa side dish I pretended to like. His dad did talk about birds, at length. And honestly, it was kind of great. They were warm, curious, and kind in the quiet way that made you feel like you didn't need to perform. At one point, while Evan was helping his mom in the kitchen, his dad leaned toward me and said, "He's different with you, you know." I looked up, caught off guard. "How so?" "Lighter. More himself." I didn't know what to say to that, so I just smiled and nodded. That night, back at his place, we curled up on the couch, a blanket draped over us. Some old black and white movie playing that neither of us were really watching. He kept his arm around me the whole time, absently running his fingers up and down my arm like he didn't even realize he was doing it. And then, during a quiet scene in the movie, he turned toward me and said it. "I love you." Just like that. No build-up, no dramatic music, just 3 words, quiet and honest. I looked at him. His face was calm. "Sure, I love you," he said again, softer this time. And I said it back. Because I did. It was terrifying and warm and entirely inevitable. We didn't need to talk about what it meant, or where we were going, or what came next. We just sat there, in each other's arms, letting the truth of it settle between us. A few nights later, I found one of those old notebooks I'd kept from high school. In the back, buried between sketches and half-finished lines, was a short paragraph I'd written the day after I saw Evan at a school assembly. He doesn't look at me, but I swear sometimes he knows I'm there, and if he ever did, really looked, I think I'd let him ruin me completely. I laughed reading it, dramatic teen brain in full force. But now, years later, lying in bed with Evan asleep beside me, I reread that line and thought, maybe he had ruined me, but only in the best way. The winter came in slow, heavy waves, the kind of cold that makes the city quieter, softer, more reflective. Evan and I fell into a rhythm, weeknights at my place, weekends at his. Grocery runs that turned into mini-dates. Sunday mornings with his cat curled up between us while we drank coffee in bed. It wasn't flashy. It wasn't loud. It just was. He started leaving things at my apartment without even realizing. An extra toothbrush, a hoodie I started wearing more than he did, a half-used bottle of the fancy shampoo he insisted didn't smell that good, but absolutely did. One night, I came home to find a small key on my counter with a note in his handwriting, just so you don't have to knock anymore. I stared at it for a long time, not because I wasn't ready, but because I couldn't believe how easy it had become to be wanted, to be known. At the office, things stayed smooth. No weirdness, no drama. People got used to seeing us together, leaving at the same time, sharing glances during meetings, tagging each other in dumb Slack threads. The HR concerns faded. The novelty wore off. Eventually, we were just another office couple people rolled their eyes at when we brought matching mugs to work. But occasionally, I'd still catch Evan looking at me from across the floor. That same quiet, thoughtful look he gave me the day we re-met in the interview room. One Friday after work, we were walking home when he said, "You know, this almost didn't happen." I raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" He shrugged. "You almost didn't get the interview. Your application got buried in the system. I only saw it because I was doing a database sweep and your name popped up. I stopped walking." "Wait, seriously?" He nodded. "Yeah. I saw your name and thought, no way. That's not that, Jason. But then I clicked your resume and read your work, and it was good. Really good. So I bumped you to the top of the list. So you used your power for good. For fate, he corrected, grinning. You believe in that? He looked at me for a second, then reached over and laced his fingers with mine. I do now. The next spring, we signed a lease together. A one-bedroom on the edge of the city. Nothing fancy. Creaky floors, weird layout, a door that stuck when it rained. But it was ours. The first night there, we ate pizza on the floor, surrounded by boxes, laughing about how Amos had already claimed the windowsill. That night, as we lay on the mattress on the floor, our bed frame was still in pieces. Evan rolled over and looked at me. You know, he said, voice sleepy, this started with a job interview. I smiled. Yeah, best hire you ever made. He laughed, then pulled me close, and just before we fell asleep, he whispered it again. I love you. It didn't happen all at once. Love rarely does. It started quietly, in a conference room, with 4 words. We've met before. And the rest, as they say, wrote itself.